Sonic Free Comic Book Day 6. It's about time I talk about the pictureless stories in this issue. This is talking about what the Genesis wave was like from the point of view of characters other than Sonic. I'm just looking forward to the Julie Sue one. In Tails' story, it just rips off the moment in Sonic 2 where a laser hit Tails' plane on Wing Fortress. It was really boring to read through all that dramatic dialogue just to get nothing creative out of it. Why did the story keep going past the point where the Genesis wave ended for him? We already knew what he was doing after that. Why did it take until less than the halfway point for it to end? If you read the comic, you already knew what he was experiencing in the Genesis wave, so why have a Tails story? The rest of the story is pointless to the point where it's not worth describing it. Then from Knuckles' perspective, he's just guarding the Master Emerald in Hidden Palace and not knowing why. I could have assumed that because the Genesis wave put Sonic through Sonic 2. Why would he ever patrol the island when that would require leaving the Master Emerald unguarded? He sees the Death Egg and things go back to normal. Julie says she thought she was back in the Twilight Cage, but doesn't explain a lot more about it for no reason, which is a baffling missed opportunity. It's sweet that Julie reminds him he promised he wouldn't remind her of when he was gone. What's weird is that the Chaotix say they were detectives in the Genesis Wave universe, even though everyone else was put back to their positions in the classic era, and obviously they weren't detectives in that. It's like he doesn't know anything about Knuckles' Chaotix. The real way to portray this would be to read the manual of Knuckles' Chaotix. I doubt that made it clear what jobs they had and what they did all day either. Thinking up that for yourself would be creative, so of course he didn't do that. There's no reason Eggman would make it so that the Chaotix were detectives, if they never were. If he's up for completely changing a character's past and can do so, why didn't he just put them in torture chambers like a real main villain? Amy's story is also extremely boring, being nothing but Amy reading tarot cards, which are apparently pronounced tarot from what I heard recently. But who cares? That's the fault of the person who put a T at the end of the word. I already saw more than enough of this. It's annoying that the text says she's joining the mission against something when she does nothing but sit. Why does Jeffrey bother lying to Amy that he's got nothing but wind magic when he can shadow meld, and he used something other than that to escape the force field Nicole trapped him in right in front of her? It's hard to remember what he did because all I remember is the characters were shown reacting to it, not that we got to see it. He might have turned into dust to escape it. I don't see how anything would escape a force field anyways. And it was stupid of Amy to waste time threatening Jeffrey after that. Bunny's story is mean to her, having her in an animal capsule, based around the fact that she was put in a roboticizer in her first appearance, which is inspired by the animal capsule. First the paragraph says all around her were Mobians, and then it says she was the only Mobian. How do you make that mistake with no one catching it after all those years of writing? This really is a fanfiction, and the editor wasn't interested in paying attention to it either. She comforts the animals that they'll get saved by the heroes, and that's all that happens. Then it would have been more interesting if the story told us how she got put in there. It says she hoped the heroes would protect her cousin, and then it says Cream is too young to deal with this. I like the idea of her and Cream having a stronger connection by being cousins, just because they're rabbits. I assume he didn't establish this in the actual comic because he didn't think Sega would be okay with it because Bunny's an American character. This means he thought nobody with power over him would be reading this, just like fanfiction. It's funny how he instantly goes back to writing like he was a fanfiction writer. Why would Eggman have the Genesis wave make Bunny organic again? And if that was the natural result, why didn't he edit it so she'd still be a cyborg, or worse? Why would he have the wave make a reality where he's less competent because he has no roboticizers? He can already change the Chaotix's lifestyle. Why does Antoine say the Genesis wave affected the Death Egg? Why does the story bother showing Rotor's perspective in the Genesis wave? We already saw him and Sally just as it was ending, and this doesn't do anything new. Why doesn't it say Rotor and Sally's story? Since it's doing both. They're in Oil Ocean and feel sick like before, with Antoine having yet another insultingly forced failure at English. It even includes a part that was already shown in the comic itself. It all goes white for him, and then he somehow decided not to use his nanite suit to help his friends, because he somehow thought they needed him to be a counselor, even though he didn't have any work to do because all the counselors were hiding. And all he does is get outvoted. Why is there a needlessly cruel line asking what's the worst that could happen? By the time he got home to put on his nanite suit, it would have already been too late for him to destroy the Death Egg to roboticize her before Sally could make her sacrifice. Why is it blaming him? Because he's from Sad AM, that's all I can think of. The written stories in this were so uncreative and uneventful that they were boring to the point of making me struggle to pay attention. These are by far the most boring stories Ian Flynn ever wrote. The only one really worth reading was the bunny one, because I've never seen her in an animal capsule before, but it was still boring because not only was nothing happening as usual, but it was obvious what the inspiration for that story was.